My name is Henry Calloway. I am 73 years old, and I keep the lighthouse at Cape Elizabeth, Maine. Most people see a quiet old man in a wool coat, climbing the tower stairs each evening to light the lamp. My daughter calls me the lighthouse keeper, like it is an insult. Last night she pushed me down the stairs to impress her in-laws. Nobody helped me, so I called the one woman my wife trusted before she died, and I said 3 words: "The light is out." By sunrise, their world was sinking. Before I tell you what happens next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. And please hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand in the dark while someone you raised pretended you did not exist. Now let me take you back to the beginning. I have kept the Portland headlight for 20 years. It is not a paying job. The Coast Guard automated the lantern decades ago, but every evening, I climb the 128 steps of that iron spiral staircase. I clean the glass of the old Fresnel lens, and I watch the light sweep across the Atlantic. It is a ritual. It is a promise. It is the last thing my wife Eleanor asked me to do before she died. Ellie passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and cruel. The way the sea takes a ship in a nor'easter. No warning, no mercy. Just gone. She was a judge. My Eleanor. Cumberland County Superior Court. The sharpest legal mind I have ever known. And I have known a few. She could read a contract and find the lie in it before most lawyers finished their coffee. She could read people even faster. She loved that lighthouse. When we first moved to Cape Elizabeth 45 years ago, she would sit on the rocks below the tower with a thermos of coffee and watch the beam cut through the fog. She used to say a lighthouse does not chase the ships. It simply stands and waits for the storm. I did not understand what she meant then. I understand now. Our mornings were simple. I would wake at 5. Before the sun touched the water, I would pull on my wool coat, the same one I have worn for 15 years, and walk from my small keeper's quarters beside the tower down to the rocks. The air in Maine at dawn has a taste to it. Salt and pine and something colder, something clean. I would breathe it in and feel the world settle into place. Then I would climb the tower. 128 steps. I counted them every single day. Not because I needed to, but because counting kept my mind steady. It kept me grounded. At the top, I would clean the glass panels of the old Fresnel lens, even though the automated system did not need me to. I did it because Eleanor had asked me to. I did it because it was the only promise I had left to keep. The rest of my day was ordinary. I would read. I had a small library in the keeper's quarters, mostly naval history. A few volumes of poetry Eleanor had left behind, and a worn copy of a book on celestial navigation that I had carried with me since I was 22 years old. I would make coffee in a French press. Black, no sugar. I would listen to the marine weather forecast on the old radio that still crackled and hissed like a living thing. And sometimes, on Sunday mornings, the phone would ring. And it would be Lily. Lily is my youngest. Not by blood, but by every measure that matters. Eleanor and I took her in when she was 10 years old. A girl from the foster system with eyes too old for her face and a spine made of iron. She is 27 now. A special education teacher in South Portland. She works 2 jobs to pay off her student loans. She calls me every Sunday without fail. Uncle Henry, she says. Because she has always called me that. Even after we told her she could call us Mom and Dad. How is the light? The light is good, Lily, I always tell her. The light is good. My other daughter, my firstborn, Monica, does not call on Sundays. She does not call on any day, unless she needs something. The last time I heard from her was 3 months ago. She wanted to know if I had any old furniture she could donate to a charity auction her mother-in-law was organizing. She did not ask how I was. She did not ask about the lighthouse. She certainly did not ask about Lily. So when the phone rang on a Tuesday morning in December and I saw Monica's name on the screen, I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. Not anger. Something worse. Hope. Dad. Her voice was brisk, efficient. The way you talk to a contractor, not a father. Spencer and I are hosting Christmas dinner at the Drake's estate on Saturday. Arthur and Priscilla are coming, obviously. And we thought it would be nice if you came too. Nice. The word landed like a pebble dropped into deep water. I could hear what she was not saying. I could hear the rehearsal behind it, the careful framing. They wanted me there, but not as a guest, as evidence, proof that Monica came from somewhere. Even if that somewhere was a lighthouse on a cold rock. That sounds lovely, Monica, I said. I would be happy to come. There was a pause. Then the instructions began. Dad, please wear something decent. Not the wool coat. And please do not talk about the lighthouse. Or the Navy. Or any of that old stuff. Arthur is retired military himself, and I do not want any awkward comparisons. Just be yourself. Well, not yourself exactly. Just be quiet. Be pleasant. Do not embarrass me. I looked out the window at the Atlantic, gray and restless under a December sky. On my bookshelf, there was a small wooden box with a brass latch. Eleanor's box. I had not opened it in 6 years. Inside was a leather-bound journal, her sea journal, filled with her handwriting. I had been afraid to read it, afraid of what she might have known, afraid of what she might have seen coming. I will be on my best behavior, I told my daughter. She hung up without saying goodbye. I set the phone down on the desk next to the photograph of Eleanor. In the picture, she was laughing, her hair blown sideways by the wind, the lighthouse rising behind her like a white sentinel. She looked fearless. She looked like she knew something I did not. I opened my closet. 2 wool coats, 3 flannel shirts, 1 pair of dress shoes I had not worn since her funeral, and 1 blazer, navy blue, the only one I owned. I pulled it out and held it up to the light. It smelled faintly of mothballs and salt air. It will have to do, I said to no one. I looked back at Eleanor's photograph, then at the wooden box on the shelf, then out the window at the lighthouse, its white tower standing patient and unmoving against the gray sky. Ellie, I said quietly, our girl invited me to dinner, but I have a feeling I am not going as a guest. I am going as a prop. The photograph did not answer, but I could have sworn, just for a moment, that Eleanor's smile grew a little sharper. I should have known then. When your own child tells you not to be yourself, it means she has already decided who you are, and she has decided you are nobody. The Drake estate sat on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic like a monument to everything money could buy and nothing it could keep. I had never felt smaller than I did walking through that front door. I had taken the bus from the lighthouse. An hour and 12 minutes on a cold plastic seat, watching the coastline slide past the foggy window. I could have called a car. I could have called a fleet of cars. But that is not who the world thinks I am. And I have spent 20 years making sure of it. Monica was waiting in the foyer. She was wearing a green velvet dress that looked like it cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Her hair was pinned up in a way I had never seen before, an architectural thing, like the rest of this house, designed to impress rather than to comfort. Her eyes swept over me, the way a general inspects a soldier who has shown up to parade in the wrong uniform. You wore the blazer, she said. It was not a compliment. It was an inventory. You look beautiful, Monica, I said. She did not hear me. She was already turning, her heels clicking on the marble floor, leading me through a hallway lined with oil paintings of ships. I almost smiled at that. Ships. If they only knew. The dining room was enormous. A table long enough to seat 16 ran down the center, draped in white linen and set with crystal glasses that caught the candlelight like frozen tears. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, 12 feet tall, dripping with silver ornaments. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Atlantic stretched out, black and vast. And somewhere in that darkness, my lighthouse was blinking. I could feel it, even if I could not see it. My light, my post, my promise. And then the Drakes descended. Commodore Arthur Drake entered the room the way a man enters a room when he believes the room has been waiting for him. He was 75, tall, silver-haired, with a jawline that had gone soft, but a voice that had not. He wore a blazer with brass buttons and a pocket square folded into a shape I am certain had a name. On his lapel, a small pin. Navy anchor. He wanted you to know he had served. He needed you to know. His wife Priscilla followed 2 steps behind, as if choreographed. She was 71, thin as a blade, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Her jewelry alone could have funded a school. She held a glass of champagne like it was a scepter. And then there was Spencer, my son-in-law, 39 years old, square jaw, expensive haircut, the kind of man who shakes your hand too hard because he learned it from a book on power dynamics. He was supposedly an architect. He had supposedly started his own firm. He supposedly made a great deal of money. I had learned a long time ago to pay close attention when a man's life is built on the word supposedly. Nate. Commodore Drake extended his hand. His grip was firm, performative. Monica tells us you keep a lighthouse. He said it the way you might say someone keeps hamsters. A hobby, a quaint little pastime for a quiet little man. Yes, sir, I said. Portland Headlight. 20 years now. 20 years. He shook his head in theatrical wonder. Remarkable dedication. Volunteer work, is it? Noble. In a simple sort of way. Priscilla glided forward, her champagne glass tilted at an angle that suggested she had been practicing the gesture in a mirror. Arthur, be kind, she said, patting my arm with her free hand. The diamonds on her fingers pressed cold against my skin. Not everyone can serve at the level you did. Some people are just meant to keep the lights on. That is exactly what I do, ma'am, I said. I keep the lights on. I could feel Monica behind me, her breath tight, her silence louder than any words. I knew that silence. It was the silence of a woman who was praying that her father would just be small enough, just quiet enough, just invisible enough to get through the evening, without damaging the illusion she had spent years constructing. We sat down to dinner. The food was elaborate, things with French names that I could not pronounce, and portions so small they seemed designed to remind you that eating was beside the point. The point was the performance. Commodore Drake held court. He talked about his years in the Navy with the confidence of a man who had never been questioned. He talked about command decisions and fleet maneuvers and a classified operation in the Gulf he was legally unable to discuss, but somehow discussed at length. He named admirals he claimed to know personally. He dropped ranks and acronyms like breadcrumbs, each one designed to establish his place at the top of a hierarchy only he could see. And then he turned to me. So, Henry, he said, leaning back in his chair, his wine glass balanced on his knee. Monica mentioned you were in the Navy as well. What was your rate? Enlisted, I assume? The table went quiet. Priscilla smiled her cold smile. Spencer looked at his phone. Monica stared at her plate. I felt it then. The familiar fork in the road. I could tell them the truth. I could tell Arthur Drake that I was not enlisted, that I had held a commission for 38 years, that the admirals he was name-dropping were men I had commanded, that the classified operation in the Gulf he was so proud of knowing about was an operation I had planned from a situation room in the Pentagon while he was still filing supply requisitions at a shore station in Norfolk. I could have said all of that. Eleanor would have. She would have looked Arthur Drake in the eye and taken him apart with 3 sentences and a smile. But I am not Eleanor. I am the lighthouse keeper. And the lighthouse keeper does not announce the storm. He simply waits for it. Just a sailor, Arthur, I said, giving him the same gentle, harmless smile I had given 100 men like him over the years. Nothing special. I spent most of my time at sea. Quiet work. Quiet work. Commodore Drake repeated the words with a grin that bordered on pity. He raised his glass. Well, here is to quiet work. The world needs its lighthouse keepers, does it not? The table laughed. Priscilla's laugh was a single sharp note, like crystal cracking. Spencer's was a low dismissive grunt. And Monica, my daughter, my child, She laughed too. It was a terrible sound. High and hollow and desperate. The same tilt of the head as her mother-in-law. The same empty ring. I looked at her across that long white table, past the candles and the crystal and the silver that reflected light but generated none of its own. And I thought of her at 15, sitting on the rocks below the lighthouse with Eleanor, her bare feet dangling over the tide pools, laughing at something real. That girl was gone. This woman had taken her place. And this woman was a stranger. I noticed the staircase on my way in. A wide set of granite steps, leading from the elevated terrace, down to the garden path, and the front drive. Beautiful stonework. Solid. The kind of stairs that would break your bones if you fell. I filed that detail away without knowing why. I watched my daughter laugh at a joke about me. She laughed the way her mother-in-law laughed, the same tilt of the head, the same hollow ring, and I realized something that made my chest ache worse than any winter wind off the Atlantic. She was not pretending to be one of them anymore. She had become one of them. The dinner ended the way all performances end. The actors were exhausted, and the audience was relieved. Except I was not the audience. I was the prop they no longer needed on stage. I stood slowly. My lower back had stiffened during 3 hours on that hard mahogany chair, and my left knee, the one that had taken shrapnel off the coast of Beirut in 1983, was sending its familiar electric complaint up through my thigh. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," I said to the room. The words tasted like sawdust. Commodore Drake barely looked up. "Come back any time, lighthouse man," he said, waving a hand in my general direction. "You are good entertainment." Priscilla glanced up from her phone. "Do bring your wool coat next time, Henry. It has such character." Monica appeared at my elbow. Her hand closed around my arm, not gently, but with the firm steering grip of a woman guiding an inconvenience toward the nearest exit. She walked me through the hallway, past the oil paintings and the chandelier, and out through the glass doors onto the rear terrace. The cold hit me like a wall. December in Maine does not negotiate. The wind was coming straight off the Atlantic, carrying the smell of salt and frozen kelp. Below the terrace, the garden sloped down toward the cliff edge, and beyond that, nothing but black ocean and black sky. And there, miles across the dark water, a single light blinked. Steady, patient. My lighthouse. Still burning, even though I was not there to tend it. "Beautiful night," I said quietly. Monica did not see the beauty. She saw a delay. "Beautiful?" She hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You sat there all night like a statue, Dad. 3 hours. You did not compliment Priscilla's collection. You did not laugh at Arthur's stories. You just sat there being you. I am sorry you felt that way, Monica. I was just trying to be respectful." "Respectful?" "You were being pathetic. Do you know what Priscilla told me in the kitchen? She said your father is clearly not from our world." "Our world, Dad. I have worked 5 years to belong here. And you are dragging me back down." We were standing at the top of the granite staircase. 12 wide steps carved from solid stone, leading down to the garden path. Beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful. Precise. Unforgiving. I reached for the wrought iron handrail. "Can you just move?" She hissed, her voice climbing. "You are always so slow. Everything about you is slow. Your walk, your talk, your little lighthouse life." I took the first step down. Carefully. The granite was cold and faintly slick, with sea mist. "Monica," I said softly, "I am doing my best. Your best is not good enough. It has never been good enough. Priscilla is watching from the window. Arthur thinks you are a joke. Spencer can barely look at you." I took another step. My hand was on the rail. My knee was screaming. And then she said it. "You are not my real family, Dad." Her voice cracked on the word real. "They are. The Drakes are my family now. And I need you to stop embarrassing me in front of my real family." The words hit me before her hands did. They hit me in the chest, in the place where I had carried her as an infant, in the place where I had held her when Eleanor died. Then her palm slammed into my back. It was not a nudge. It was a hard, two-handed shove, right between my shoulder blades, driven by 5 years of shame and 1 evening of unbearable pressure. My hand slipped from the rail. My left knee buckled. My right foot found nothing but air. I fell. There is nothing graceful about a 73-year-old man falling down stone stairs. I hit the 4th step with my shoulder. Something cracked. My glasses flew off and shattered on the granite below, a small bright sound. My temple struck the edge of the final step with a wet, heavy thud. White light exploded behind my eyes. Then red. Then nothing but pain. I landed on the garden path. Gravel bit into my palms. Blood ran down the side of my face, warm and slow, pooling in the hollow of my ear. I looked up. They were all there. 4 silhouettes against the warm golden light of the dining room, looking down at me like I was something that had fallen out of a trash can. Commodore Drake shook his head. Old sailors and their sea legs. He will be fine. Walk it off, Henry. Priscilla peered down. Someone check if there is blood on the stonework. I just had it power washed. Spencer laughed. A single, short sound. And Monica, my daughter. She stood at the top of those stairs with her hands still raised, her palms still open from the push. Her face was not horrified. It was annoyed. Dad, she said, flat and cold as the granite beneath me. Get up. You are making a scene. Then they turned, all 4 of them. They walked back through the glass doors. I heard Priscilla's voice trailing down the hall. Monica, darling, pour me another glass, would you? The doors closed. I was alone. The wind howled off the Atlantic. The blood dripped onto frozen gravel. And across that vast black water, my lighthouse blinked. Steady. Patient. Faithful. I lay there for a long time. Not because I could not move, but because I needed to feel every second of it. The cold. The taste of blood. The sound of that door closing. I needed it to burn so deep that I would never be tempted to be weak again. Then I reached into my ruined blazer and pulled out my phone. The screen was cracked, but it worked. I did not call 911. I did not call the police. I called the one person my wife had trusted with everything. The phone rang twice. A voice answered, calm and precise, as if she had been waiting for this exact call. Admiral. Commander Elise Tran spoke my true rank for the first time in 6 years, and the sound of it, in the cold night air, was like a blade being drawn. What happened? The blood was cooling on my face. The stars were spinning. The lighthouse was still blinking. The light is out, Elise, I said. 3 seconds of silence. Then 4 words. Understood, Admiral. Initiating protocol. I was not in a hospital. Hospitals are for victims who want sympathy. I wanted justice. And justice does not wait in line at the emergency room. By 3 in the morning, I was sitting in a suite at the Portland Harbor Hotel. Private security had picked me up from the Drake Estates service entrance. I had walked there myself, one agonizing step at a time, around the side of the house, past the gardener's shed, down the gravel path to the street. I did not use the front door. I did not want them to know I had left. I wanted them to wake up tomorrow and find nothing but a blood stain on their precious granite and an empty night where their punching bag used to be. The suite was warm. Dark wood, leather furniture, a window that looked out over Portland Harbor. The lights of the fishing boats rocked gently on the black water. Somewhere beyond them, invisible in the dark, my lighthouse stood. Its beam was still sweeping the coast. It did not need me. It had never needed me. But I had needed it. Every single night. For 20 years. Because climbing those 128 steps was the only thing that kept me from becoming the kind of man who sits in hotel suites and gives orders. Tonight, I was that man. Dr. Hendricks arrived at 3:15. He had been my physician for 15 years. A quiet, steady man who asked few questions and answered even fewer. He cleaned the laceration on my temple with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. 3 stitches. A butterfly bandage over the left eyebrow. He examined my shoulder, which was badly bruised but not broken, and my left knee, which was swollen and hot to the touch. "You need rest, Henry," he said, packing his black leather bag. "No stairs for at least a week." He paused. "And if I may say so, you need to tell me who did this to you." "I will handle it," I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded, picked up his bag, and let himself out. The door closed with a soft, heavy sound. I changed out of my ruined blazer. I put on a clean white shirt from my overnight bag, the one I always kept packed. I poured a cup of black coffee from the French press the hotel had prepared. I sat down in the leather chair by the window, and I waited. At 4 o'clock, Commander Elise Tran walked through the door. She was 42 years old, sharp-featured, with dark hair pulled back in a tight knot and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a charcoal suit that fit her like armor. Under her arm, she carried a black leather briefcase with 2 words embossed in gold on the clasp: Calloway Trust. Eleanor had found Elise 20 years ago. A young law student at the University of Maine, first-generation Vietnamese American, working 3 jobs to pay tuition. Eleanor had mentored her, funded her, shaped her. She had once told me that Elise was the daughter she wished Monica had become. I had thought it was a cruel thing to say. Now I understood it was simply an honest one. Elise set the briefcase on the desk and sat down across from me. She did not ask if I was all right. She did not offer condolences. She looked at the bandage on my temple, at the bruise darkening beneath my eye, and she asked the only question that mattered. "Which condition did she trigger, Admiral?" There it was. Admiral. My true rank. Rear Admiral. United States Navy. Retired. 38 years of service. Commander of a carrier strike group. Veteran of 4 theaters. The man the Drakes thought was a lighthouse keeper had once held the lives of 6,000 sailors in his hands. I had buried that man 20 years ago, the day I moved into the keeper's quarters and started climbing those stairs. I buried him because Eleanor asked me to, because she said the uniform attracted the wrong kind of attention, because she said our daughter's future husband would either be intimidated by it or try to exploit it, and neither outcome was good. She was right, as always. Condition red, I said. She put her hands on me. Elise. She pushed me down a flight of stone stairs because her mother-in-law was watching from the window. Elise opened the briefcase. Inside were files arranged with surgical precision, color-coded, tabbed, and indexed. Eleanor's system. Eleanor's architecture. Even from the grave, my wife was running the operation. Protocol Lighthouse was activated at 2:15 this morning, Elise said. Her voice was smooth, clinical. Tin here 1. Fog. She laid out the damage. 5 supplementary credit cards. 3. Registered to Monica Calloway Drake. 2. To Spencer Drake. All issued from your primary accounts. Suspended. The automated rent subsidy for the Drake estate. $12,000 per month. Terminated. The lease guarantee for Spencer's Porsche Cayenne. Revoked. He is already 60 days past due on the payments, which you had been covering. The tuition payments for Chloe and James at Whitmore Academy. $35,000 per year, per child. Cancelled. The account they draw from is frozen. She closed the file. As of this moment, Admiral, every financial safety net you have spent 3 years building around your daughter has been removed. They are entirely on their own. 3 years. $280,000. That is what I had given them. Quietly, invisibly, through a network of accounts and automated transfers that Eleanor and I had designed together. Monica thought the money came from Spencer's startup. Spencer thought it came from a trust fund he had convinced himself he deserved. Neither of them had ever once asked where it actually came from. I closed my eyes. I saw Eleanor on her hospital bed, 3 weeks before the end. The morphine was dulling the pain, but not her mind. She had gripped my hand with a strength that startled me and said, "Henry, I know you. You are too kind. You will let her bleed you dry because you love her. So, I am building the walls you are too soft to build yourself. When she crosses the line, and she will, Henry, she will cross it. You will have the tools. Promise me you will use them." I promised, Ellie. I whispered to the empty room. 6 years late, but I promised. Elise was watching me. She had not moved. She had the patience of a woman who had learned it from the best. "There is more, Admiral," she said. She reached into the briefcase and pulled out a thicker file. "I had hoped this was simply about your daughter being cruel, but I ran the deep background check Eleanor authorized, the one she called the just-in-case protocol." She laid the file on the desk between us. "Spencer Drake does not have a job, Henry. He has a criminal enterprise, and his father is helping him run it." I can picture the next morning at the Drake estate with perfect clarity, not because I was there, but because I had spent 3 years studying the rhythms of my daughter's borrowed life, and I knew exactly which thread would unravel first. The fog rolled in from the Atlantic that morning, thick and white and absolute, swallowing the coastline the way silence swallows a confession. From the windows of the Drake estate, you would not have been able to see the ocean. You would not have been able to see the garden, or the cliff, or the granite stairs where my blood was still drying in the cold. You would not have been able to see what was coming. I know Monica would have woken late. She always did after those performances. The effort of being someone else for an entire evening left her drained. She would have walked barefoot across the cold marble floor to the kitchen, a gleaming stainless steel cathedral where no one ever actually cooked. She would have reached for her phone to place her weekly order from the organic grocery service. Wild salmon, $12 sourdough, high-end sparkling water, avocados from Peru, the small luxuries of a life she believed she had earned. She would have filled her cart. She would have pressed checkout. Payment declined. A flicker of annoyance. Nothing more. She would have tried again. Maybe checked the card number. Payment declined. She would have switched to the backup card. The one Spencer had given her, the black titanium Visa. He always made a show of sliding across restaurant tables. Payment declined. Spencer. Her voice would have been sharp now, cutting through the morning quiet. Something is wrong with the cards. None of them are working. He would have stumbled out of the bedroom, his head thick from the wine, his eyes bloodshot. He would have grabbed her phone, punched in his own credentials with the impatient jabs of a man who believed technology existed to serve him. Payment declined. He would have tried his banking app. Invalid password. Tried again. Invalid password. Requested a reset. No email arrived. "It is a glitch," he would have insisted, his voice rising. "A system error. It is Sunday morning. The servers are probably down." But it was not a glitch. It was not an error. It was a correction. And the correction had only just begun. I know the first real panic would have arrived by phone. That old-fashioned, undeniable sound of a landline ringing in a house where no one uses the landline. Monica would have answered, annoyed. "Mrs. Drake, this is Cape Realty Management for the Drake Estate residents. We are calling because your automated rent payment of $12,000 has failed. The primary account has been frozen by the account holder." I can hear her voice tightening. "That is impossible. My husband handles the rent. It is automatic." "Ma'am, the account it draws from has been frozen. We require payment in full by 5 o'clock this evening, or we will begin formal proceedings. Have a good day." Click. Before the silence could settle, the next call would have come. Whitmore Academy. The private school where Chloe and James wore matching blazers and learned Mandarin on Tuesdays. Mrs. Drake, we are calling regarding an outstanding balance. The tuition payment for both children has been returned. Stamped account frozen. We will need to ask you to keep Chloe and James home until the matter is resolved. Click. Then another call. Portia Financial Services. Mr. Drake, your lease payment for the Cayenne has been declined. You are already 60 days past due. If we do not receive payment by end of business, we will repossess the vehicle. Spencer would have been shouting by now. 60 days? That is impossible. I paid it. I know I paid it, but he had not paid it. He had never paid it. I had. Every month, quietly, invisibly, through an automated transfer he never knew existed. He had simply watched the bill disappear and assumed it was his own brilliance at work. I know what happened next because panic has a rhythm to it. It builds like a wave. First the confusion, small and manageable. Then the denial, loud and insistent. Then the scramble, frantic and graceless. And finally the terrible, airless moment when the wave crests and you realize there is no bottom beneath you. Monica would have grabbed her phone. She would have scrolled past the alerts. American Express, suspended. Saks, Fifth Avenue, account frozen. Apple Pay, disabled. Primary account holder action. The words repeated like a drumbeat. Primary account holder. Primary account holder. 48 missed calls. Banks, creditors, service providers, all of them ringing the same alarm. And scattered among them, 15 missed calls from a single contact. Dad. She would have pressed my name. She would have held the phone to her ear with both hands, the way you hold something that is already broken. It did not ring. A cold electronic voice spoke immediately. We are sorry. The number you have dialed has been disconnected. She would have tried again. And again. Disconnected. 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 She would have called the lighthouse. The landline in the keeper's quarters, the number she had memorized as a child. She would have listened to it. Ring. One ring, echoing in an empty room. 2, 3, 4, 5. That lonely, hollow sound bouncing off walls where no one was home. Then the voicemail. My voice. Calm and simple. You have reached Henry at the light. Sorry I missed you. Leave a message after the tone. Beep. I know she did not leave a message. I know she just stood there. The phone in her trembling hand. The fog pressing against every window of that enormous house. And felt the first cold fingers of understanding close around her throat. She would have turned to Spencer. Her face white. Spencer. He is gone. His phone is disconnected. He is not at the lighthouse. Oh my God. Spencer. What did we do? And Spencer. My beloved son-in-law. The man who had spent 3 years living on my money while telling my daughter it was his own genius, would have looked at her with something that was not quite fear and not quite fury. Those cards, Monica, he would have said, his voice dangerously low. They are not mine, are they? They are his. Your father, the lighthouse keeper. He has been paying for all of this. The fog outside was so thick now that the house might as well have been floating. No land, no sea, no horizon. Just white in every direction, and somewhere inside it, 2 people who had just discovered that the ground beneath their feet had never been real. The lighthouse keeper was the bank, and the bank had just closed. Back in my suite, the morning sun cut through the fog and hit the harbor like a blade. The fishing boats were moving again, nosing out of the marina in slow single file. The tide was going out. I could see it from my window, the waterline retreating, exposing the rocks and the mud and the jagged things that had been hiding beneath the surface all along. Elise was sitting across from me with a second file open on the desk. It was thicker than the first. The cover was unmarked, but the weight of it told me everything I needed to know. This was not a financial summary. This was a criminal dossier. She had not slept. I could see it in the faint shadows beneath her eyes, but her voice was as steady as ever. Eleanor had trained her well. Eleanor had trained her to be the woman she needed when the storm came. "Tell me about Spencer," I said. Elise folded her hands on top of the file. Spencer Drake was terminated from Whitfield & Associates, a mid-tier architectural firm in Portland, 18 months ago. The official reason was restructuring. The real reason was fraud. He had been inflating project budgets and skimming the difference into a personal account. The firm discovered $120,000 in falsified invoices. "Fired," I said. "Not laid off. Fired for cause." They gave him the option to resign quietly. No charges, no public record. He signed a non-disclosure agreement and walked away. She paused. That was the end of his career as an architect. But it was the beginning of something much worse. She turned a page in the file. 8 months after his termination, Spencer registered a new business. Drake Design Consultants. On paper, it is an independent architectural firm specializing in luxury coastal properties. In reality, it has not designed a single building. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. Then what does it do? It moves money, Elise said. $1.2 million in the last 14 months. The money comes from a network of shell companies connected to a real estate investment group that the FBI has been investigating for 3 years. Spencer's firm processes the funds as design consultation fees. The money goes in dirty and comes out looking like legitimate income. She looked at me. "It is textbook money laundering, Admiral." I stared at the file. The numbers were clean and precise, arranged in columns that told a story of systematic, deliberate criminal activity. My son-in-law was not a failed architect pretending to be successful. He was a criminal, using his failure as a cover. "And his father," I said. "The Commodore." Elise turned to the next section. Her jaw tightened. And for the first time that morning, I saw something other than professionalism in her eyes. I saw anger. "Commodore Arthur Drake," she said, "was forced into early retirement from the Navy 12 years ago. The official record states medical discharge. The actual reason, which was classified and sealed as part of an internal investigation, was misappropriation of funds." She met my eyes. "He embezzled $600,000 from the Naval Family Support Fund, money designated for the families of wounded and fallen service members." The room went very quiet. "I have been in combat. I have given orders that sent young men and women into harm's way. I have held the hands of sailors who were dying far from home. And in all of that, in all those years of service and sacrifice, the one thing that held us together was the knowledge that our families would be cared for, that the fund existed, that someone was watching over the people we left behind. He stole from military families," I said. My voice was barely above a whisper. "From the families of men and women who served and bled and died." $600,000, Elise confirmed. "The Navy buried it to avoid a public scandal. He was allowed to retire with a reduced pension and no criminal record. But the money was never recovered." I stood up. My knee protested, but I did not care. I walked to the window and pressed my palm against the cold glass. The harbor spread out below me. The boats, the docks, the old brick warehouses that had been converted into restaurants and galleries. A beautiful, peaceful scene. A lie. Just like the Drakes. "So I have been funding my daughter's life," I said to the glass, "with a man who launders money for criminals, whose father stole from the families of veterans, whose entire world is built on fraud and theft, and the kind of cowardice that makes my blood run cold." I turned back to Elise, and my daughter pushed me down the stairs to earn their approval. Elise did not flinch. She held my gaze and waited, the way Eleanor used to wait when she knew I needed to find the words myself. "How long has the IRS known?" I asked. 14 months, Elise said. The Criminal Investigation Division opened a case on Spencer after a suspicious activity report was flagged by his bank. They have been building the file ever since. surveillance, financial forensics, wire intercepts. And they have enough? They have more than enough. But they have been waiting for the right moment to move. She paused. There is something else, Admiral. Something you need to know about how the investigation started. I looked at her. Eleanor, Elise said quietly, and the name filled the room like a hymn. Your wife filed the original tip with the IRS 2 years ago. From her hospital bed, I closed my eyes. Of course she did. My brilliant, unrelenting, magnificent Eleanor. She had been dying. And instead of spending her last weeks in peace, she had been building one final fortress around the family she loved. She could not save Monica from her own choices, but she could make sure the evidence would be waiting when the walls came down. She knew, I said. She knew about Spencer before any of us. She suspected. Elise corrected gently. She ran the numbers herself. She saw the inconsistencies in his claimed income. She could not prove it from a hospital bed. But she gave the IRS enough to start looking. And they found everything. I opened my eyes. The tide was still going out. The rocks below the waterline were fully exposed now, sharp and dark and ugly. The kind of rocks that tear the hull out of a ship if you do not know they are there. My wife knew they were there. She had always known. Elise reached into her briefcase and pulled out something small and black. A digital audio recorder. She placed it on the polished surface of the desk, the way a surgeon places a scalpel on a tray. There is more, Admiral, she said. Her voice dropped. My investigator recorded a conversation this morning at a diner in Scarborough. She looked at me with an expression I had not seen before. Not pity. Not anger. Something closer to dread. The Drakes are not just desperate, Henry. They are planning. The recorder sat on the table between us like a loaded weapon. Elise pressed play. The audio was crisp, captured by a device hidden inside the Drake estate during a routine maintenance visit Eleanor had arranged 2 years before her death. My wife had planned even that. A microphone, no bigger than a coat button, embedded inside a smoke detector in the Commodore's private study. The first voice belonged to Spencer. I recognized the lazy confidence, the way he stretched his vowels, like a man who believed the world owed him patience. The old man is a liability. He asks too many questions. Monica can barely keep him under control anymore. Then the Commodore. His voice was rougher in private, stripped of the theatrical charm he wore at dinner parties. He is not a problem if we manage him correctly. The money flows through Monica, as long as she keeps him close. We have access. Spencer laughed. Close? She can barely stand him. You saw her face at Thanksgiving. She looked like she was babysitting a stray dog. A third voice entered. Priscilla. Her tone was ice wrapped in silk. Then we accelerate the timeline. Get Monica to push for power of attorney. Tell her it is about protecting his health. She will believe anything if you frame it as concern. I stopped breathing. Elise paused the recording. She watched my face the way a surgeon watches a patient waking from anesthesia, looking for signs of shock, measuring how much truth a man could absorb before something inside him cracked. There is more, she said quietly. I nodded. She pressed play again. Spencer's voice returned. Lower now. Conspiratorial. Power of attorney is step 1. Once we have legal control, we liquidate his accounts, sell the lighthouse property, and roll everything into the Bermuda structure. By the time anyone notices, the money is 3 jurisdictions deep. The Commodore grunted approval. And if he resists? A pause. Then Spencer, almost casual. Monica handles that. She has been softening him up for 2 years. One more push and he folds. If not, we have Dr. Whitfield. A cognitive decline diagnosis, a few missed appointments, and any court in Maine will hand us guardianship. Dr. Whitfield. I knew the name. Monica had insisted I see him for a routine checkup 6 months ago. She had driven me there herself, waited in the lobby, and smiled when I came out. I thought she was being kind. I thought my daughter still cared. The checkup was a setup. They were building a paper trail to declare me incompetent. Elise stopped the recording. The silence in the hotel room was enormous, the kind of silence that fills a cathedral after the last note of a hymn fades. I could hear the harbor outside, the soft clang of buoys, the distant cry of gulls circling the fishing boats. When was this recorded? I asked. 14 months ago. 3 months after Eleanor passed. 3 months. My wife had been in the ground for 90 days, and they were already mapping the theft of everything she had built. Everything we had built together. There are 6 more recordings, Elise continued. They span 11 months. The plan evolved. Initially it was financial. Power of attorney, asset liquidation, offshore transfers. But in the most recent recording made 8 weeks ago, Spencer discusses something else. She opened her laptop and pulled up a document. It was a draft filing for emergency guardianship, prepared by a lawyer named Calvin Mercer, an attorney with a history of elder abuse cases who had been disciplined twice by the Maine Bar Association. The filing described me as a 73-year-old male exhibiting signs of progressive cognitive decline, unable to manage personal finances or maintain safe living conditions. It cited the lighthouse as evidence of dangerous isolation. They planned to file this in January, Elise said. If the judge granted emergency guardianship, Spencer would become your legal guardian within 72 hours. Full control of your assets, your medical decisions, your living arrangements. I looked at the document. My name was already typed into the spaces. Henry Calloway. Respondent. Spencer Drake. Petitioner. Monica Drake. Supporting witness. My own daughter was going to testify that I was losing my mind. I stood up and walked to the window. The harbor stretched below, gray water under a gray sky. A storm was building in the east, a dark line of clouds rolling toward the coast like a slow fist closing. The Weather Service had issued a warning. Gale force winds by evening, 12-foot swells, small craft advisory. Every fisherman in Portland would be pulling his boat to shelter, but I was not pulling anything to shelter. I was steering straight into the storm. What is Signal 2? I asked without turning around. Elise closed the laptop. Signal 2 is called Storm. Eleanor designed it for exactly this situation. If the threat escalates beyond financial exploitation to legal manipulation or personal danger, Signal 2 authorizes full countermeasures. Define full. Criminal referral packages delivered to the FBI field office in Portland, the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, and the Maine Attorney General. Simultaneously, a civil lawsuit filed against Spencer Drake, Arthur Drake, and Calvin Mercer for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, and unlawful guardianship filing. Additionally, all 6 recordings are released to Monica with a single accompanying message. What message? Elise opened her briefcase and removed a sealed envelope. Eleanor's handwriting was on the front. The same careful cursive I had watched her write for 41 years of marriage. The envelope said, "For Monica, when she forgets who her father is." I took the envelope. I did not open it. Not yet. When do we send the signal? Elise asked. Outside, the storm clouds swallowed the last strip of blue sky. The buoys clanged harder. The gulls went silent. Tonight, I said. Before they file that guardianship petition. Before Spencer moves another dollar. Before my daughter signs another lie with my name on it. Elise nodded. She picked up her phone and dialed. "This is Commander Tren," she said. Signal 2 confirmed. "The storm is here." The storm hit Cape Elizabeth at 7:14 that evening. I know the exact time, because the lighthouse beam had just completed its rotation when the first gust bent the pine trees along the shore road nearly horizontal. Rain came sideways, not falling but thrown, as if the Atlantic had picked up the ocean and hurled it at the coast. The windows of my keeper's cottage rattled in their frames. The power flickered twice, held, then surrendered. Darkness swallowed everything except the emergency lantern on my kitchen table and the pale glow of Elise's laptop screen. We had set up a command post in my cottage. Elise sat at the table with 2 phones, the laptop, and a stack of folders thick enough to stop a bullet. Across from her sat a man I had not seen in 4 years. Raymond Coe, 61, former JAG officer, now a private attorney specializing in elder abuse litigation. Eleanor had retained him on a quiet annual fee since the year before she died. He had never been activated. Tonight, he was earning every dollar. "The filings are ready," Raymond said, adjusting his reading glasses. He spread 3 documents across the table. Civil complaint against Spencer Drake, Arthur Drake, and Calvin Mercer. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and fraudulent guardianship filing. We are seeking an emergency restraining order, asset freeze, and punitive damages. "How fast can a judge see it?" I asked. "I called Judge Patricia Harmon at home an hour ago. She is duty judge this week for Cumberland County. She agreed to review the emergency motion tonight by secure email. If she grants the restraining order, it takes effect immediately. Spencer cannot file his guardianship petition, cannot access your accounts, cannot contact you, except through counsel." Elise opened her laptop and turned the screen toward me. "While Raymond handles the civil side, I have prepared the criminal referral packages. 3 separate submissions." She pointed to each folder in turn. "FBI Portland Field Office. They already have an open investigation into Spencer's shell companies. This package adds the recordings, the fraudulent guardianship documents, and Eleanor's original suspicious activity report. Second, IRS criminal investigation. Spencer has not reported approximately $900,000 in income routed through Drake Design Consultants. That is textbook tax evasion on top of the money laundering. Third, Maine Attorney General, Elder Abuse Unit. The guardianship scheme alone carries a penalty of up to 10 years. I listened to the numbers, the legal terms, the careful structure of destruction my wife had engineered from her hospital bed. Eleanor had been a federal judge for 22 years. She understood the law the way a shipbuilder understands the sea. Every beam placed for a reason. Every joint designed to hold under pressure. She had built this case the same way. 1 document at a time, 1 recording at a time, 1 quiet phone call at a time, while cancer dissolved her body from the inside. She never told me. She carried it alone, so I would not have to carry it until the moment arrived. "Play the last recording," I said. Elise hesitated. "Henry, the last one is different. Play it." She pressed a key. The audio filled the dark cottage, competing with the wind screaming outside. Monica's voice. My daughter. Clear, steady, and completely unfamiliar. "I do not care about the lighthouse. I do not care about his medals or his stupid sailor stories. He is an old man living in a tower, pretending the world still needs him. The world does not need him. I need his money. Spencer needs his money. And once we have guardianship, he can rot in whatever nursing home the state provides." A long silence on the recording. Then Spencer. "And if he fights it?" Monica again. "He will not fight. He has no one. Mom is dead. That foster girl Lily barely visits. He is alone, Spencer. Completely alone. That is what makes this easy." The recording ended. Rain hammered the roof. The lantern flame bent sideways from a draft sliding under the door. I had prepared myself. I had listened to the earlier recordings with the discipline of a man who spent 38 years receiving bad news in uniform, casualties at sea, structural failures, mission aborts. You learn to absorb the blow, file the emotion, and focus on the next order. But your daughter's voice saying you can rot is not a casualty report. It is not a structural failure. It is the sound of something that was supposed to be permanent, revealing that it was hollow all along, like knocking on what you believed was oak and hearing the thin echo of cardboard. Raymond broke the silence. "That recording is admissible. Maine is a 100-party consent state for recordings made in private residences when there is reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Eleanor's original authorization covers it, Elise added quietly. Eleanor listened to this recording before she died. It was the last one captured before the device's battery expired. She heard every word Monica said. I closed my eyes. I could see Eleanor in her hospital bed, headphones in, laptop balanced on her knees, listening to our daughter erase her father from the category of human being. And instead of crying, instead of breaking, Eleanor had opened a new file on her computer and written the next clause of the trust. That was my wife. Grief made her sharper. Pain made her more precise. Send everything, I said. The civil filing to Judge Harmon, the criminal packages to all 3 agencies, and prepare Monica's envelope for delivery tomorrow morning. Raymond began typing. Elise picked up her phone and started making calls. The cottage filled with the sound of work, keyboards and low voices, and the rustle of paper layered over the howling storm outside. I walked to the window. The lighthouse beam was dark. I had not lit it tonight. For the first time in 11 years, the tower stood black against the sky. Ships in the harbor would see nothing. No warning. No guidance. No light. That was the point. The signal was not the light. The signal was the darkness. And the drakes were sailing straight into it. The storm broke before dawn. I know because I never slept. I sat in Eleanor's reading chair by the cottage window and watched the Atlantic pull itself back from the rocks like a fighter retreating to his corner between rounds. The sky shifted from black to iron, to the pale silver that only a Maine coast can produce, the color of a knife blade held under cold water. Debris littered the shore road, broken branches, a torn lobster trap, a metal sign from the harbor ripped clean off its post. The world outside looked like it had been searched by someone angry, emptied out and left open. At 6:15 my phone buzzed. A text from Raymond Co. Judge Harmon granted the emergency restraining order at 4:47 a.m., all provisions in effect. Spencer Drake is prohibited from filing any guardianship petition, accessing your financial accounts, or contacting you directly. Violation carries immediate arrest. Order served electronically to Calvin Mercer's office at 5 a.m. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and made coffee. By 7 o'clock, Elise called. Her voice had the flat efficiency of someone who had also not slept, but did not consider that relevant. Criminal referral packages were delivered electronically at 5:30. FBI. Portland confirmed receipt. IRS. Criminal investigation. Confirmed receipt. Maine Attorney General's office opens at 8, but the package is in their secure queue. I also hand-delivered a duplicate hard copy of the FBI package to the field office night desk at 3 this morning during the storm. The duty agent signed for it personally. During the storm? I asked. Rain does not delay orders, Admiral. That was Elise. Eleanor had chosen her the way she chose everything. Not for comfort, but for certainty. I poured a second cup of coffee and looked out at the lighthouse tower. The lamp was still dark. I had a decision to make about relighting it, but not yet. Not this morning. This morning belonged to a different kind of signal. And Monica's envelope? I asked. A courier will deliver it to the Drake estate at 9 o'clock. Signature required. Monica must sign for it personally. I hung up and sat with my coffee in the quiet cottage. The only sound was the drip of water from the eaves and the occasional crack of a branch settling on the roof. I thought about what Monica would be doing right now. I did not have to imagine very hard. She would be waking up in the Drake estate to a house that had changed overnight without making a sound. The credit cards were dead. The rent was unpaid. The tuition was canceled. And now, somewhere in the legal system, 3 separate agencies were opening files with her husband's name on them. But Monica did not know any of that yet. She was waking up to the small disasters first. The everyday humiliations that accumulate like water damage, invisible until the ceiling falls. I was right. At 7:42, my phone rang. Monica's number. I let it ring 6 times before I answered. Dad. Her voice was tight. Not angry yet. Controlled. The voice she used when she wanted something, but needed to sound like she was offering something instead. Dad. Something is wrong with the bank accounts. I have been trying to reach the credit card company since yesterday. Nobody can tell me anything. And Spencer's passwords are not working. Good morning, Monica. A pause. She had expected panic from me, or at least confusion. My calm unsettled her. I could hear it in the half-second delay before she spoke again. Did you hear what I said? The accounts are frozen. The rent check bounced. Whitmore Academy called twice yesterday about the tuition. Chloe's teacher left a message asking if everything is all right at home. Is everything all right at home? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. I heard Spencer's voice in the background, muffled, asking who she was talking to. She covered the phone. When she came back, her control had slipped half a degree. Dad, I need you to call the bank and fix this. You set up those accounts. You have the authorization codes. Just call them and tell them it was a mistake. It was not a mistake. Silence. The kind of silence that happens when someone hears a sentence they understand perfectly but cannot accept. The kind of silence that precedes either tears or rage, depending on the person. With Monica, it was always rage. What do you mean it was not a mistake? I mean that every payment I have made on your behalf for the past 3 years has been terminated. The credit cards, the rent, the tuition, the car lease. All of it. Deliberately. By me. I heard her breathing change. Short, shallow breaths. The sound of a person recalculating an entire reality in real time. You cannot do that, she said. That money is for your grandchildren. Chloe and James need that school. We need the house. You cannot just, Monica. I said her name the way I once said the names of officers who had failed inspections. Quiet. Final. 3 nights ago, you pushed me down a staircase. You watched me bleed on your in-laws' floor. You told me I was not your real family. Do you remember that? She did not answer. A courier will arrive at your door at 9 o'clock this morning. There is an envelope for you. I need you to sign for it and open it alone. Not with Spencer. Not with the Commodore. Alone. What is in the envelope? Your mother wrote you a letter. The silence that followed was different from every silence before it. It was not angry. It was not calculated. For the first time in years, I heard my daughter's silence sound exactly like fear. 9 o'clock, Monica, I said. Do not be late. I hung up and finished my coffee. The courier arrived at the Drake estate at 8:57. 3 minutes early. Elise had hired a professional process service company out of Boston, the kind that delivered documents to CEOs facing indictments and politicians facing subpoenas. They did not knock politely. They knocked like the law was standing behind them, because usually it was. I was not there. I did not need to be. Elise had arranged a live audio feed through a device she had placed in the estate's front porch light during the same maintenance visit that installed the study microphone. Eleanor's planning again. Always 2 moves ahead. Even from the grave. I sat in my cottage and listened. 3 hard knocks. A pause. Then, Monica's voice. Irritated. Still wrapped in the false authority she borrowed from the Drake family name. Who is it? Courier service, ma'am. Package for Monica Drake. Signature required. A lock turning. The door opening. A clipboard exchanged. Who sent this? The sender is listed on the envelope, ma'am. Have a good morning. Footsteps retreating. The door closing. Then nothing. For 11 seconds. I counted. When Monica spoke again, her voice had changed. The irritation was gone. In its place was something smaller. Something I had not heard from my daughter since she was 14 years old and came home from school crying because her best friend had told everyone her secret. She sounded like a child standing at the edge of something she could not understand. "Mom?" She had seen Eleanor's handwriting on the envelope. That careful cursive, the slightly left-leaning letters that Eleanor developed during law school and never changed. I could picture Monica holding the envelope, turning it over, running her thumb across the ink, recognizing the hand that had written her birthday cards, her school permission slips, her college acceptance congratulations. For Monica, when she forgets who her father is, I heard the envelope tear. A single sheet of paper unfolding. Then silence. Long, terrible silence. The kind that means someone is reading something that rearranges the furniture inside their chest. I did not have the letter memorized. Elise had shown it to me the night before, during the storm, after Raymond left. She had opened the sealed envelope carefully, photocopied the contents for the legal file, and resealed it with archival tape. The letter was handwritten. One page. Eleanor's words, dated 11 days before she died. It read, "Monica, if you are reading this, then you have done the thing I prayed you would never do. You have hurt your father. Not with words, though I know you have done that too. You have hurt him in a way that triggered the protocol I built, which means the harm was physical, financial, or legal. Knowing the family you married into, it was probably all three. I need you to understand something. Your father is not a lighthouse keeper. He is a retired Rear Admiral of the United States Navy. He commanded a carrier strike group. He held a top-secret security clearance for 26 years. The men and women who served under him would walk through fire for him, and some of them did. He chose the lighthouse because he wanted peace after I died. Not because he had nothing. Because he had lost everything that mattered and wanted to be useful in a quiet way. You looked at his quiet life and saw weakness. That was your first mistake. I built the Calloway Trust with 3 signals. If you are reading this letter, Signal 2 has been activated. That means the recordings from your father-in-law's study have been delivered to federal authorities. That means Spencer's financial crimes are now part of an active investigation. That means the guardianship scheme Calvin Mercer prepared on your behalf has been blocked by a court order. Yes, Monica. I knew about all of it. I knew before I died. I am not writing this letter to punish you. I am writing it because punishment is already happening, and I cannot stop it from where I am. The trust is a machine. Once activated, it runs on its own. Your father did not design it to be cruel. I designed it to be thorough. There is a difference, though I doubt you will appreciate it right now. What I want you to know is this. There is a Signal 3. It is the last signal. If it activates, you will lose everything permanently. The house, the inheritance, the family name on every legal document your father controls. Everything will transfer to someone else. Someone who earned it by being kind when kindness was not required. Signal 3 has a condition. It activates only if you continue down the path you are on. If you stop, if you come to your father not with demands but with honesty, if you sit with him and tell him the truth about what you have done and why, then Signal 3 remains dormant. The trust gives you a window. I do not know how long. That is your father's decision, not mine. You were a good girl once, Monica. You had your father's patience and my stubbornness and a laugh that made every room feel warmer. I do not know where that girl went. I do not know if she is still inside you. But I designed this letter to find out. Choose carefully. I am watching. Even if you cannot see me, with all the love I have left. Mom, the audio feed captured what happened next. A sound I had not heard Monica make in over a decade. She was crying. Not the performative tears she used at family dinners to redirect attention. Not the sharp, weaponized sobs she deployed during arguments with Spencer. These were real, ugly, broken. The kind of crying that comes from the center of the body, from the place where a person stores the version of themselves they abandoned and hoped no one would notice. She cried for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I know, because I timed it. Not out of cruelty, out of hope, Because real tears take time, and fake tears do not. Then I heard Spencer's footsteps on the stairs. His voice, sharp and impatient. "Monica, what the hell is that? Who sent you a letter? Let me see it." The crying stopped. I waited. The next 3 seconds would tell me whether Eleanor's letter had reached the girl inside my daughter or only scratched the surface of the woman she had become. "It is nothing," Monica said. "Just junk mail." I closed my eyes. Spencer Drake did not believe in problems. He believed in angles. I learned this about my son-in-law the way I learned most things about him. Too late, and through evidence rather than conversation. Elise's surveillance had been tracking his movements since Signal 2. And by noon on the day Monica received Eleanor's letter, Spencer was already running. Not physically. Spencer never ran from anything physically. He ran through phone calls, through lawyers, through the network of contacts his father had spent 30 years cultivating in the halls of Maine's business community. He was not panicking. He was calculating. And that made him more dangerous than a man in panic. Because a panicking man makes mistakes he cannot hide. A calculating man makes moves he believes are invisible. His first call went out at 10:15. Elise intercepted the metadata, not the content. Legally, through the monitoring provisions Eleanor had built into the Trust's investigative framework, the call lasted 9 minutes and went to a number registered to offshore incorporation services in the Cayman Islands. His second call, at 10:41, went to Calvin Mercer, the disgraced attorney who had prepared the fraudulent guardianship filing. That call lasted 14 minutes. His third call was the one that mattered. At 11:08, Spencer called the Commodore. Elise had the study microphone feed. And this time the conversation was not a conspiracy discussed in comfortable leather chairs over bourbon. It was a war room. "They know everything," Spencer said. His voice was stripped of its usual polish. Underneath the expensive education and the tailored confidence, Spencer Drake sounded exactly like what he was. A small man standing in a building that was starting to burn. Someone sent files to the FBI, the IRS, the state AG. I do not know how much they have, but if they have the shell company records, we are looking at federal charges. Both of us. The Commodore's response was calm, unnervingly calm. The calm of a man who had navigated worse storms, or at least believed he had. Who gave them the files? It had to be the old man. Calloway. He has a lawyer. Some woman. She has been digging into our financials. The lighthouse keeper has a lawyer. The Commodore repeated it slowly, letting the absurdity coat each word. Arthur. The man wears the same coat every day. He rides the bus. He does not have a lawyer. He has a pension and a lantern. Then explain how the FBI has our incorporation documents. A pause. I could hear the Commodore's breathing through the microphone. Heavy. Measured. The breathing of a man reassessing a board he thought he controlled. "What about Monica?" the Commodore asked. "She received some kind of letter this morning. A courier delivery. She would not show it to me. She has been sitting in the bedroom with the door locked since 10 o'clock. She is not answering my calls. Get that letter." "She will not." "I did not ask what she will do, Spencer. I told you what you will do. Get that letter." Whatever Calloway sent her is the key to understanding what he knows and what he has. If his dead wife left instructions, those instructions are in that letter. "Bring it to me by this afternoon." Spencer's voice tightened. "And if Monica will not hand it over?" Priscilla's voice entered the recording. She must have been listening from the doorway. Her tone carried the same icy authority I had heard at the Christmas dinner. The voice of a woman who viewed other people's emotions as furniture to be rearranged. "Monica will do what she is told. She always has. Remind her where she was before she married you. Remind her what she goes back to if this family decides she is no longer useful." The recording captured Spencer's exhale, a long, slow release of air. The sound of a man accepting an instruction he did not enjoy, but would follow anyway. "Fine," he said. "I will get the letter." "And Spencer," the Commodore added, Call Harrington. Tell him we need the Bermuda accounts moved by Friday. If the feds freeze our domestic assets, we need liquidity offshore. Move everything that is not nailed down. That is going to trigger more alerts. The alerts have already been triggered. At this point, we are not avoiding the fire. We are outrunning it. The recording ended. Elise played it for me in the cottage at 1:30 that afternoon, sitting at the same kitchen table where we had set up the command post the night before. The storm was gone. The sky outside was washed clean, almost offensively blue. The kind of blue that makes you forget violence happened 12 hours ago. They're going to move the money offshore, I said. Elise nodded. The Bermuda structure Spencer mentioned is a layered trust registered through 3 shell entities. Harrington is David Harrington, a financial advisor in Boston with a history of helping clients hide assets during federal investigations. He has been fined twice by the SEC. Can they move the money before the FBI acts? Normally, yes. Offshore transfers can clear in 48 hours. But Eleanor anticipated this. Elise opened a new folder. Inside was a single document. A pre-drafted motion for emergency asset preservation, already formatted for Judge Harmon's court. If we file this by 3 o'clock today, the judge can freeze all domestic and traceable offshore accounts associated with Spencer Drake, Arthur Drake, and Drake Design Consultants before a single dollar moves. I looked at the document. My wife had written the draft herself. The legal citations were flawless. The language was precise, clinical, and devastating. At the bottom, in Eleanor's handwriting, was a small note in the margin. Check and mate, Arthur. I almost smiled. Almost. File it, I said. Elise picked up the phone. Raymond, we need an emergency filing. 3 o'clock deadline. Judge Harmon's court. Outside, the lighthouse stood silent against the blue sky. The lamp was still dark, but the signal was louder than ever. Spencer went after the letter at 2:17. I heard everything through the microphone. The bedroom door was not locked anymore. Monica had come downstairs at some point during the early afternoon and was sitting in the kitchen. I could hear the faint clink of a glass against a countertop, the sound of ice shifting in liquid. She was drinking. Not socially. Alone. In the middle of a Tuesday. In a house that was falling apart around her. That told me more than any recording could. Spencer entered the kitchen the way he entered every room, assuming ownership. Where is the letter? Monica did not respond immediately. The ice clinked again. Monica. The letter. The one the courier brought this morning. Your father sent it. I need to see it. My mother sent it. Your mother is dead. She wrote it before she died. She knew, Spencer. She knew about everything. The guardianship. The shell companies. Calvin Mercer. Everything. The silence that followed was surgical. I could feel Spencer recalibrating through the microphone. The tiny pause of a man whose operating system was rewriting itself in real time. He had not expected Eleanor. Nobody ever expected Eleanor. That was her gift. She moved so quietly through legal systems that by the time you heard her footsteps, the door behind you was already locked. That is impossible, Spencer said. She was dying. She was in a hospital bed. She did not have access to any of... She was a federal judge for 2 years, Spencer. She had access to things you cannot even imagine. And she left instructions. There is something called Signal 3. If it activates, we lose everything. Not just the money. Everything. The house. The inheritance. The trust. All of it goes to someone else. Who? I do not know. She did not say. Give me the letter. No. The word landed like a slap. I heard it clearly through the feed. And it surprised me almost as much as it must have surprised Spencer. Monica had not said no to that man in years. She had been trained out of it. Slowly, methodically. The way the Drakes trained everyone around them. Through financial dependency, social pressure, and the quiet implication that disagreement meant exile. But Eleanor's letter had found something. Some small, stubborn fragment of the girl Monica used to be. The girl who argued with her mother about curfew, who slammed doors, who cried at movies she pretended not to care about. That girl had been buried under years of Drake conditioning, but she was not dead. She was just trapped under the rubble, and Eleanor's words had given her enough air to say one word: no. Spencer did not accept it. I did not expect him to. Monica, listen to me carefully. Your father is not who you think he is. He has a team of lawyers. He has been planning this for months. That letter is a manipulation tool designed to turn you against your own family. You are not my family, Spencer. You are the man my father paid for. The glass hit something. A counter. A wall. I could not tell. The sound was sharp and final. The sound of a thing breaking that was not a glass. Every dollar in this house came from my father, Monica continued. Her voice was shaking now, but not from weakness. From the physical effort of saying truths she had swallowed for years. The rent, your car, the children's school, even that watch on your wrist. My father bought everything you pretend to own. And your father, the great Commodore, he stole from military families. Mom knew about that too. It is all in the letter. I heard footsteps. Heavy. Spencer was moving toward her. Give me the letter, Monica. Now, touch me and I will call my father. And after what happened on those stairs 3 days ago, I promise you. Spencer, he will not send a courier next time. He will send the police. The footsteps stopped. Another silence. This one was different from all the others. This was the silence of two people standing in a kitchen realizing their marriage had just ended, not with paperwork or a conversation, but with a threat that made both of them understand they were no longer on the same side. Spencer spoke one more time. His voice was low, controlled, stripped of everything except calculation. You are making a mistake. Your father is going to destroy this family, and you are helping him. When the Commodore finds out you refuse to hand over that letter, you are going to lose the only people who ever treated you like you mattered. Monica laughed. It was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone recognizing a lie they had believed for so long that hearing it spoken aloud made it suddenly, painfully obvious. The only person who ever treated me like I mattered is the man I pushed down the stairs. And I am starting to think that is the worst thing I have ever done. Spencer left the kitchen. I heard his footsteps cross the marble foyer, heard the front door open and close, heard a car engine start in the driveway. He was going to the Commodore. He was going to report his failure and receive new instructions. The machine would recalibrate. The Drakes would find another angle, but something had shifted. A crack had opened in the wall. Spencer and the Commodore had built around my daughter. And through that crack, Eleanor's voice was still speaking. I checked the time. 2:41. Raymond had 19 minutes to file the emergency asset freeze. Elise was already at the courthouse. My phone buzzed. A text from Elise. Filing submitted. Judge Harmon reviewing now. I set the phone down and looked at the lighthouse. The lamp was still dark, but somewhere inside the Drake estate, in a kitchen that smelled like bourbon and broken glass, my daughter had just remembered who she was before she forgot. It was not enough. Not yet. But it was the first true thing she had said in years. Judge Harmon signed the emergency asset freeze at 3:11 that afternoon. Raymond called me with the details while I stood at the base of the lighthouse tower, watching the tide crawl back across the rocks. The order covered every domestic account linked to Spencer Drake, Arthur Drake, Drake Design Consultants, and 3 associated shell entities Elise had identified in her criminal referral package. It also included a provision I had not expected. Judge Harmon, citing the severity of the fraud evidence and the risk of flight capital, had issued a supplemental order requesting federal cooperation to freeze 2 offshore accounts in Bermuda tied to David Harrington's advisory firm. She went further than we asked, Raymond said. There was a note of admiration in his voice. Harmon does not do that often. She read the full package. Every recording transcript. Every financial trace. She used the phrase, systematic predatory exploitation of a vulnerable elder, in her written order. That language matters, Henry. It sets the tone for everything that follows. How long before Spencer finds out? His attorney of record is Calvin Mercer. Mercer was served electronically at 3:15. I would estimate Spencer knows within the hour. I thanked Raymond and hung up. Then I climbed the lighthouse stairs for the first time since the night of the storm. My shoulder still burned from the fall at the Drake estate. The bruise on my knee had turned the color of a storm cloud, purple and black with edges of yellow, and each step sent a dull ache radiating up my thigh. But I climbed anyway. 72 steps to the top. I had counted them every day for 11 years. At the top, I stood beside the lamp and looked out across the Atlantic. The ocean was calm now, deceptively so, the way it always was after a storm, as if it were pretending nothing had happened. Lobster boats were back on the water. A tanker moved along the horizon, slow and indifferent. Somewhere below, seals lounged on the exposed rocks, barking at each other about nothing. My phone buzzed. Elise. Spencer just called Calvin Mercer. Mercer informed him about the asset freeze. Spencer then called Harrington in Boston. Harrington confirmed. The Bermuda accounts are also frozen. They cannot move a dollar. What did Spencer do? He drove to the Commodore's house. He arrived 7 minutes ago. The study microphone is active. He arrived ET2. Minutes ago off T2. End day. This. Kuda. She patched me through. The Commodore was shouting. I had never heard Arthur Drake shout. At dinner parties, he spoke in measured baritone. In the recordings, he had been calm, strategic, controlled. But the man I heard now was none of those things. The man I heard now was a 75-year-old fraud watching the walls close in. You told me you had this under control. You told me the offshore structure was untouchable. Now, a county judge in Portland, Maine, is freezing accounts in Bermuda. How is that possible, Spencer? The judge cited federal cooperation provisions. Someone gave her a complete financial map. Every shell company, every transfer, every invoice. Whoever is advising Calloway has been building this case for years. Years? The Commodore's voice dropped. The shout collapsed into something worse. A whisper. That means it was not the old man. It was the wife. The judge. Eleanor Calloway has been dead for 6 years. And she is still winning. The silence on the recording was devastating. 2 men, standing in a study full of naval memorabilia and stolen money, realizing they had been outmaneuvered by a woman who was no longer alive. Eleanor had built a prosecution from her deathbed, assembled evidence that would survive her by half a decade, and trusted 2 people to carry it forward. Elise, who had the discipline, and me, who had the patience. The Commodore spoke again. What about the girl? Monica will not cooperate. She has the letter. She refused to give it to me. She knows about the shell companies, the guardianship scheme, everything. Then she is a liability. She is your daughter-in-law. She is a liability, Spencer. Liabilities get cut. I heard Priscilla enter the room. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor like a metronome counting down to something. Arthur is right, she said. Monica is finished. File for divorce. Immediately. Claim abandonment. Financial irresponsibility. Whatever Calvin can construct. Get custody of the children. Chloe and James are Drake's. They stay with us. Spencer hesitated. If I divorce Monica, I lose any connection to Calloway's money. There is no money left to connect to, Spencer. The accounts are frozen. The FBI has the files. This is no longer about acquisition. This is about survival. We keep the children. We keep leverage. Without Chloe and James, Calloway has no reason to negotiate. The children, my grandchildren. Chloe, 7 years old, who drew pictures of lighthouses because her grandfather lived in one. James, 5, who called me Captain Henry and saluted every time I walked through the door. They were going to use my grandchildren as hostages. I ended the feed. I did not need to hear more. I called Elise. Activate signal 3. A pause. 3 seconds. The longest 3 seconds of the entire operation. Admiral. Signal 3 is permanent. Once activated, the Judas Clause transfers all remaining trust assets to the contingent beneficiary. Monica will be fully and irrevocably disinherited. There is no reversal. Eleanor designed it that way. I know how my wife designed it, and you understand that the contingent beneficiary is Lily. I know. Another pause. I could hear Elise breathing. For the first time since I had known her, Commander Elise Trunn sounded like she wanted to say something that was not in the protocol. She had a chance, Henry. Monica had a chance. The letter gave her a window. She called it junk mail, Elise. And now they are coming for my grandchildren. Elise exhaled. When she spoke again, the emotion was gone. The commander was back. Signal 3 confirmed. The light is out permanently. The Judas Clause was Eleanor's masterpiece. She never called it that. In the official trust documents, it was designated Section 12B of the Calloway Family Irrevocable Trust, a conditional disinheritance provision triggered by qualifying acts of betrayal against the primary beneficiary. Eleanor had drafted it during her last month of life, working from her hospital bed with Elise sitting beside her, typing the language into a secure legal template while the morphine drip counted seconds in the background. I asked her once why she named the subsection the way she did. She looked at me over her reading glasses, the ones with the thin gold frames she wore when she was doing serious work, and said, "Because every family has a Judas, Henry, and every Judas believes the betrayal will go unpunished. This clause exists to prove them wrong." Elise executed the clause at 4:45 that afternoon. The mechanics were precise. A formal notice of disinheritance, signed by me as grantor and certified by Raymond Coe as legal counsel, was transmitted electronically to Calvin Mercer's office, with instructions to forward to his client Monica Drake. Simultaneously, a second notice was sent to Spencer Drake's personal email, his business email, and the Commodore's registered address. The notice stated, in language Eleanor had chosen herself, that Monica Calloway Drake had been permanently removed as beneficiary of the Calloway Family Irrevocable Trust pursuant to Section 12 by, effective immediately. The grounds listed were specific: physical assault against the grantor, conspiracy to obtain fraudulent power of attorney, conspiracy to file false guardianship proceedings, aiding and concealing financial crimes committed by Spencer Drake and Arthur Drake. Each ground was supported by dated evidence, recordings, financial records, and the guardianship documents Calvin Mercer had prepared. The notice also named the new primary beneficiary, Lily Chen, age 27, foster daughter of Henry and Eleanor Calloway, currently employed as a special education teacher at Baxter Elementary School in South Portland, Maine. Lily did not know yet. I had not told her. That conversation would come later, and it would be the hardest conversation of this entire ordeal, not because Lily would refuse the inheritance, but because she would try to. That was who she was. The girl who, at 16, had arrived at our door with a garbage bag containing everything she owned and apologized for taking up space. The girl Eleanor and I had spent 7 years convincing that she deserved to be in a room without asking permission first. Lily would say she did not earn it. She would say Monica was my real daughter. She would say the money should stay in the family. And I would have to explain to her that family is not blood. Family is the person who shows up at your lighthouse on a Wednesday afternoon with groceries she bought with her teacher's salary because she noticed you looked thin the last time she visited. But that was tomorrow's weight. Today, I had to carry what was happening now. At 5:12, Monica called. I answered on the second ring. This time I did not let it ring 6 times. This time there was nothing left to perform. Dad. Her voice was destroyed. Not angry, not calculating, not performing. Destroyed. The voice of a person who has just read a legal document that erases their future and realizes, for the first time, that the document is not a negotiation. It is a conclusion. I got the notice. I know. It says I am disinherited. Permanently. It says everything goes to Lily. Dad, you cannot. I can. Your mother made sure I could. She wrote the clause herself. Mom would not do this to me. I let that sentence hang in the air. I let it float between us like smoke, because we both knew it was a lie, and lies need silence to reveal themselves. Eleanor would absolutely do this. Eleanor loved Monica more than she loved anyone except me, and it was precisely that love that made her build a weapon capable of cutting her own daughter out of the family if the daughter became someone who deserved to be cut. Love without consequences is not love. It is permission. Eleanor understood that distinction better than anyone I have ever known. She did do this, Monica. She wrote every word. She heard the recording of you telling Spencer I could rot in a nursing home. She heard it before she died, and she still gave you a chance. The letter was your chance. Signal 3 had a window. You had time to come to me, to tell me the truth, to choose differently. I was scared, Dad. You called your mother's letter junk mail. The silence that followed was absolute. Not the angry silence of our previous calls. Not the calculating silence of a woman planning her next move. This was the silence of someone arriving at the bottom. The silence of a person who has run out of doors and finds only walls. Spencer is filing for divorce, she said quietly. Priscilla told him to. They want custody of Chloe and James. They say I am an unfit mother. They are going to take my children, Dad. My hand tightened on the phone. The Drake family had moved exactly as the recording predicted. Monica was no longer useful. So Monica was being discarded. The children were leverage, bargaining chips, assets, to be controlled. Priscilla had probably already called a family attorney. The Commodore had probably already rehearsed his testimony about what a stable and supportive home he could provide. They were going to try to take my grandchildren and raise them in a house built on stolen money and counterfeit honor. Listen to me, Monica. Listen carefully. I am going to say this once. I gripped the phone and stared out at the dark lighthouse lamp. The trust is done. I cannot undo Signal 3. Your mother designed it to be permanent, and I will not override her wishes. But your children are not part of the trust. Your children are part of this family, and no one, not Spencer, not the Commodore, not Priscilla, is going to take them. How? I have nothing, Dad. No money, no house, no lawyer. How am I supposed to fight them? You are not going to fight them alone. He hung up and dialed Elisa. Commander, I need Raymond to file an emergency motion for temporary custody of Chloe and James Calloway Drake. Grandparent petition. And I need it filed before Spencer's divorce papers hit the court. Understood, Admiral. Consider it done. The FBI arrived at the Drake estate at 7 o'clock the next morning. I was not there for that either. But Raymond was. He had positioned himself at a coffee shop across the street from the estate's gated entrance at 6:30, nursing a black coffee and reading the Portland Press-Herald like a man with nowhere to be. He called me when the vehicles pulled up. 2 unmarked sedans. 4 agents. They have a warrant. I listened to Raymond describe the scene while I sat in my cottage, watching the morning light crawl across the kitchen table. The agents approached the front gate. They buzzed the intercom. No one answered for 3 minutes. Then the gate opened, and the agents walked up the long gravel driveway toward the house where, 4 nights ago, my daughter had pushed me down a staircase while her in-laws watched. Raymond called back 40 minutes later. Spencer Drake was escorted out in handcuffs at 7:42. Federal charges: money laundering, wire fraud, tax evasion. Calvin Mercer was arrested separately at his office downtown at 8:15. The Commodore was not arrested. but agents served him with a subpoena to appear before a federal grand jury next Thursday. Priscilla was not named in the warrant. And Monica? She was inside during the arrest. An agent spoke with her briefly. She is not a target at this time, but she was advised to retain independent counsel. She was crying when Spencer was taken out. I closed my eyes. I tried to feel something about Spencer Drake being walked out of that marble foyer in handcuffs. Satisfaction, vindication, justice. But the only thing I felt was tired. The kind of tired that does not come from lack of sleep, but from carrying a weight so long that your body has forgotten what it feels like to stand without it. At 9 o'clock, I drove to South Portland. Not to the Drake estate. Not to the courthouse. To Baxter Elementary School, where Lily Chen was teaching a Tuesday morning reading circle to a classroom of second graders with learning disabilities. I parked Eleanor's old Volvo in the visitor lot and walked through the front office. The receptionist recognized me. I had visited Lily at work twice before, bringing sandwiches from the deli she liked on Congress Street. The receptionist smiled and waved me through. I found Lily in room 14. Through the small window in the door, I watched her sitting cross-legged on a colorful rug, holding a picture book open so 6 children could see the illustrations. She was using different voices for each character. A deep growl for the bear, a squeaky whisper for the mouse. The children were mesmerized. One boy, small and serious with thick glasses, was leaning forward so intently that he had forgotten about the juice box in his hand, which was slowly dripping onto the rug. Lily noticed the drip before the boy did. Without breaking character, without interrupting the story, she reached over and gently tilted the juice box upright, then squeezed the boy's shoulder. He looked up at her and grinned. She grinned back and kept reading. That was Lily. She fixed things without making anyone feel broken. I waited until the reading circle ended, and the children moved to their desks for a writing exercise. Lily stepped into the hallway, saw me, and immediately looked concerned. Uncle Henry, what happened? Are you okay? Your face. She reached toward the butterfly bandages still visible on my temple. I am fine. I need to talk to you. Do you have a few minutes? She glanced back at her classroom. A teaching assistant was supervising. Lily nodded and led me to a small bench in the hallway, next to a bulletin board covered in construction-y paper butterflies the children had made. I sat down beside her and looked at this woman my wife and I had raised. 27 years old. 5'3", hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing a cardigan with a small coffee stain on the sleeve that she probably had not noticed, earning $30,000 a year to do work that most people could not handle for a week. Lily, I need to tell you some things about who I am, and about what Eleanor left behind. She listened. She did not interrupt. She did not gasp or cry or ask questions out of turn. She listened the way she listened to her students, with her whole body, leaning slightly forward. I told her I was not a lighthouse keeper. I told her I was a retired rear admiral. I told her about the Calloway Trust, the 3 signals, the Judas Clause. I told her about Monica and the stairs, about Spencer and the shell companies, about the Commodore and the stolen military funds. I told her about Eleanor's recordings, Eleanor's letter, Eleanor's protocol built from a hospital bed, while cancer took her apart one organ at a time. And then I told her that she was the new primary beneficiary of the Calloway Family Irrevocable Trust, that everything Eleanor and I had built, the investments, the properties, the accounts, now belonged to her. Lily stared at me. For 10 seconds, she did not move. The hallway was quiet, except for the muffled sound of children practicing their letters in room 14. Then she said exactly what I knew she would say. I cannot accept that, Uncle Henry. That belongs to Monica. She is your daughter. Monica made her choice, Lily. But I am not your daughter. I looked at this woman sitting on a school bench in a stained cardigan, surrounded by paper butterflies, who had just been told she inherited a fortune and whose first instinct was to give it back to the person who hurt me. Eleanor chose you, Lily. She wrote your name into the trust with her own hand. She did not choose you because you are perfect. She chose you because when you arrived at our door at 16 with everything you owned in a garbage bag, the first thing you said was, "I am sorry for the trouble." And Eleanor decided right then that you would never have to apologize for existing again. Lily's eyes filled. She pressed her lips together. She looked down at her hands. "What do I do now?" she whispered. "You finish teaching your class. Then you come to the lighthouse tonight, and I will explain everything." Lily arrived at the lighthouse at 6:47 that evening. I heard her car before I saw it. The old Honda Civic she had bought with 3 years of saved teacher's salary, the one with the dented bumper and the back seat permanently covered in children's books and art supplies. The engine made a sound like a sewing machine arguing with itself. Eleanor used to say that car had more character than most people we knew. I opened the cottage door and watched her walk up the stone path. She had changed out of her school clothes into jeans and a heavy sweater. She was carrying a brown paper bag. "I brought dinner," she said. "Soup from that place on Commercial Street you like. And bread. The sourdough." That was Lily. Walking into the most important evening of her life carrying soup. I took the bag and led her inside. The cottage was warm. I had lit a fire in the stone hearth for the first time since Eleanor died. The flames moved across the walls and ceiling like living things, turning the small room golden. Eleanor's reading chair sat by the window. Lily looked at it but did not sit in it. She never did. She always chose the wooden chair at the kitchen table, the one with the uneven leg that wobbled slightly when you leaned back. She chose it because it was the least comfortable seat in the house. And Lily had spent her whole life choosing the least comfortable seat, making herself small, so others could have more room. Not tonight. Tonight I was going to teach her to take up space. We ate the soup. I let her settle. I let the fire and the bread and the familiar sounds of the cottage do their quiet work. Then I pulled Eleanor's sea journal from the wooden box on the shelf and set it on the table between us. "Eleanor kept this journal for 30 years, I said. "Every entry is dated. Every entry is about the sea, the tides, the weather, the ships she watched from this window. But between the sea entries, she wrote something else. Instructions, legal provisions, financial details. The entire architecture of the Calloway Trust is hidden inside these pages, written in the margins, between the lines, in a shorthand only Elise and I can read." Lily touched the journal's leather cover. Her fingers moved carefully, the way she handled her students' artwork, as if the thing in her hands had been made by someone who mattered. "She planned everything from here," Lily said. It was not a question. She planned everything from everywhere. The hospital. This cottage. The courthouse. Eleanor never stopped working, even when her body was failing. She said the law was the last honest language left, and she intended to keep speaking it as long as she could hold a pen. I opened the journal to a page near the back. Eleanor's handwriting filled the margins around a description of a November storm. In the narrow space between observations about wave height and wind direction, she had written a single paragraph. I read it aloud. "Lily will not believe she deserves this. She will try to give it back. She will say, Monica is the rightful heir. She will say, she is not family. When she says these things, Henry, do not argue with her. Do not list reasons. Do not explain the law. Just tell her about the night she came home from her first year of teaching and sat in this kitchen and cried because one of her students, a boy named Derek who could not read, had finally read a whole sentence out loud for the first time. Tell her how she described his face. Tell her, she said, he looked like someone who just found out he was allowed to be smart. Then ask her who gave Derek permission to believe that. She will say she did. And then she will understand why I chose her." I closed the journal. Lily was staring at me. Her eyes were full, but she was not crying. She was holding it. The way she held everything, carefully, with both hands, refusing to let it spill until she understood what it meant. "Do you remember Derek?" I asked. Of course I remember Derek. He is in 5th grade now. He reads above grade level. His mother sends me a card every Christmas. Do you remember what you said about his face when he read that first sentence? Lily's breath caught. I said he looked like someone who just found out he was allowed to be smart. Who gave him that permission, Lily? She pressed her hands flat against the table. The wobble in the chair stilled. I did. Eleanor chose you because you give people permission to be more than what the world told them they could be. You did it for Derek. You do it for every child in that classroom. And Eleanor wanted someone to do it for this family after she was gone. A tear slid down Lily's cheek. She did not wipe it. She let it fall onto the table, onto the wood that Eleanor and I had eaten 10,000 meals on, where we had argued about cases and laughed about nothing and sat in silence watching the beam sweep across the dark water. I do not know how to be rich. Uncle Henry, you do not have to be rich. You have to be responsible. There is a difference. Eleanor taught me that. Now, I am teaching you. Lily nodded slowly. She looked around the cottage, at the fire, at Eleanor's chair, at the sea journal on the table, at the lighthouse tower visible through the window, dark against the evening sky. Can we light it? She asked. The lighthouse. Can we turn it back on? I had not planned this. I had not scripted it. But the moment she asked, I knew it was the only right ending for this night. Come with me, I said. We climbed the 72 stairs together. My knee ached. Lily walked beside me, matching my pace, not rushing ahead, not falling behind. At the top, I showed her the lamp mechanism, the brass housing, the Fresnel lens that split one flame into 1,000 directions. The switch that connected to the modern electric system the Coast Guard had installed decades ago. You do it, I said. Lily reached out and turned the switch. The lamp blazed to life. Light poured through the lens and exploded outward, sweeping across the dark Atlantic in a brilliant white arc. Below us, the ocean caught the beam and threw it back in scattered diamonds. For the first time in 5 days, the Cape Elizabeth lighthouse was lit. Lily stood in the glow, her face illuminated, her hands still on the switch. She was crying now. Not the broken crying of someone who is lost, the quiet crying of someone who has been found. Welcome home, Lily, I said. 3 weeks passed. The world did what the world always does after a storm. It cleaned up. It moved on. It pretended the damage was smaller than it was. Spencer Drake pleaded not guilty at his arraignment and was released on $200,000 bail, paid by a bondsman the Commodore found through contacts. I suspect he would rather not explain in front of a grand jury. The conditions were severe. Surrender of passport, electronic monitoring, no contact with witnesses, which included me, Monica, and Elise. His trial date was set for September. Raymond told me the federal prosecutor was confident. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings alone were enough. But combined with the financial paper trail, Spencer was looking at 8 to 12 years. Calvin Mercer surrendered his law license before the Bar Association could take it. He cooperated with investigators in exchange for a reduced charge. His testimony implicated the Commodore directly in the guardianship scheme, which upgraded Arthur Drake's status from subpoenaed witness to unindicted co-conspirator. Raymond said it was only a matter of time before the grand jury returned charges. The Commodore's naval pension was under review. The stolen $600,000 from the Naval Family Support Fund had resurfaced in the investigation, and the Navy was no longer interested in keeping secrets for a man whose secrets were already on the front page of the Portland Press-Herald. Priscilla Drake sold her jewelry quietly. I heard this from Elise, who heard it from a contact at a Freeport consignment shop. The diamond earrings went first, then the pearl necklace, then the gold bracelet the Commodore had given her for their 40th anniversary. I did not feel satisfaction at this news. I did not feel anything at all. Priscilla was not my enemy. She was simply the weather system that had surrounded my daughter, until Monica forgot which direction was home. The grandparent custody petition was granted on a temporary basis. Judge Harmon reviewed the circumstances, Spencer's arrest, the frozen assets, the absence of a stable home environment, and awarded me provisional guardianship of Chloe and James, pending a full hearing in 60 days. Raymond drove the children to the lighthouse on a Thursday afternoon. Chloe brought a backpack full of colored pencils. James saluted me at the door and said, "Reporting for duty, Captain Henry." I almost broke. Almost. Lily helped me set up the spare room. She painted the walls pale blue, the color of the sky over the ocean on a calm morning. She found bunk beds at a second-hand shop in Scarborough and assembled them herself, refusing my help, insisting that a woman who could wrangle 23 second graders could handle an Allen wrench. She was right. The beds were sturdy. The room was warm. Chloe taped her lighthouse drawings to the wall above her pillow, and James lined up his toy ships on the windowsill facing the sea. For the first time in 6 years, the lighthouse cottage had children in it. And for the first time since Eleanor died, the building felt less like a monument and more like a home. Lily came every weekend. She brought groceries, books, art supplies, and the kind of patient energy that made 2 frightened children feel safe enough to laugh again. She read to them the way she read to her students, with different voices and exaggerated expressions, and a willingness to read the same book 4 times in a row without complaint. Chloe asked her once if she was their aunt. Lily looked at me. I nodded. "Yes," she said. "I am your Aunt Lily." Chloe hugged her. James saluted. The kitchen smelled like the pancakes Lily had made that morning, the ones shaped like lighthouses that looked more like wobbly rockets but tasted perfect anyway. It was a Sunday evening, 3 weeks and 2 days after Signal 3, when Monica called. I was sitting in Eleanor's reading chair. The fire was low. Chloe and James were asleep upstairs. Lily had gone home an hour earlier. The lighthouse beam swept its steady arc across the dark water, and the cottage was filled with the kind of silence that is not empty but full of warmth and breathing children, and the slow tick of the old clock Eleanor had bought at an antique shop in Kennebunkport 30 years ago. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. "Monica," I answered. "Dad." Her voice was thin, stripped of everything I had heard in it over the past 3 years, the performance, the entitlement, the sharp edges she had borrowed from the Drake family and worn like armor. What was left was small and raw and human. "I am at a shelter," she said. "The Pine Street Women's Shelter in Portland. I have been here for 5 days." I closed my eyes. Spencer's lawyer sent the divorce papers last week. I signed them. I did not fight it. There was nothing to fight for. A pause. The sound of a breath being gathered from somewhere deep. Priscilla took the furniture. The Commodore canceled the lease. I had $11 in my checking account. $11, Dad. The fire cracked. The clock ticked. The beams swept. "I know what I did," Monica continued. "I know I pushed you. I know I chose them over you. I know I called Mom's letter junk mail. I know I let Spencer and the Commodore use me to steal from the one person who never stopped giving. I know all of it, and I am not calling to ask you to undo the trust or give me money or fix what I broke. I know you cannot do that. Then why are you calling, Monica?" The longest pause of the conversation. Maybe the longest pause of my life. Outside, the beam completed a full rotation. Light swept the rocks, the water, the dark horizon, and returned. "Because you are my father, and I do not know what to do next. And I thought, maybe you could help me figure that out." I sat in Eleanor's chair and held the phone and listened to my daughter breathe 3 miles away in a shelter bed. The girl who pushed me down the stairs. The girl who chose marble floors over lighthouse stairs. The girl whose mother wrote her a letter from the edge of death, and whose mother's letter she called junk mail. The girl who was now sitting in a room with nothing, asking the man she hurt for the only thing he had always given freely. Direction. I looked at the lighthouse beam cutting through the darkness. Eleanor's voice moved through my memory, clear as the night she said it. Sitting in the chair I was sitting in now. "A lighthouse does not choose which ships it saves, Henry. It just keeps the light on. I took a breath. Monica, tell me something. What is your plan? The line was quiet. The beam swept. The children slept. The ocean breathed. And somewhere in a shelter in Portland, my daughter began to answer.